33 children just died the other day, actually, of starvation. That's hitting us, but it doesn't seem to be hitting us enough. So have we lost this sort of bit of humanity? And this is where I think to start talking about these inner developmental goals is really important. We had the millennial goals, we now have the sustainable development goals, and none of them are really working. So what do we need to do? We need to reach back into people. People need to start, we need a change of mindset and education and otherwise. We need to reach back into ourselves and start having a look at ourselves. And if you look at the idea of the inner development goals, they're not as complex as the sustainable development goals, because there's 17 goals.
There's 169 targets.
Within each target, they have their own set of goals. They are complicated and they interconnect beautifully, but they obviously are missing something. And I think this is what this group of people sort of saw as well, right? The goals are missing. What are they missing? They're missing also the philosophy of life. And your purpose and sense of purpose in life, that's what they're missing. So how do we then put these together? At the end of the day, our society needs an absolute major change.
Adrienne Doolan, it's lovely to have you back with us.
Really nice to be here again.
Adrienne, you are a sustainability leader. You're a change maker. You are a passionate advocate of inner development goals. How you been?
Good, trucking along. Trying to change the world one individual at a time. It's slow. There's lots of pushbacks on sustainability at the moment, because of I'm going to blame it on the US. There's when drill baby drill was stated on January 20th, that was a bit of a panic. I'd say it's a bit of a pullback although there's excessive talking about it. So I am not sure that we're selling the idea of sustainability in the right way. So I think we need to have a look at different ways in order to persuade businesses, especially here in the region.
What do you think has changed? Is it people's mindsets? Is it incentives? What's changed? Are people going backwards, or are people pushing back now? Or
Larger corporates are pushing back because there's still there's still not enough mandates. But even in the EU, we're getting pushbacks because now they had this CSRD, this corporate sustainability reporting, right? And that was going to be, you had to report if you had up to 250 employees within your company. Right. So that was going to be a lot of companies reporting, because SMEs as well here in the region, it's up to 300 employees is an SME, but in Europe, it's up to 500. So that meant that a lot of companies were going to have to be reporting. Now they're talking about changing. There's a new omnibus, and they're talking about changing it up to, moving it up to 1,000. And I was actually on a webinar where they were talking about even 3,000 employees. Now, if that happens, then, that's going to be a huge drawback. But on this webinar, the people were voting, they had polls on it. And more than, I think it was 65% said they will still continue to do what they're doing, which is good. People are not going to change.
Who's putting their hand up and going and saying 3,000? Who is that person, or that corporate or country? Why 3,000? Why are they pushing that now?
Yeah, show me them and I'll go talk to them. I think because, we're very defined in this world by money. Right, we follow the money bag, and because I think with the US, allowing now and business to go forward as usual, withdrawing from the climate, the Paris Agreement talks, now even UNESCO during the week, although that was expected, and the US pulled out of UNESCO. So each move that they make allows big money to sort of take a little bit of a breath and say, another few years before we have to really
go again.
Yeah.
And then do you feel then that the pushback is quicker when these things happen? People are much more inclined to go back to their old ways quicker than make the change going forward?
Yeah, because you just you don't have to think. We've got a few years of respite now, and you don't have to think. So, but we do have to think, because as you know, since we last spoke, which is only a couple of months, we still continue to raise our emissions month on month, not even year on year, but month on month. Albeit Ireland is doing really well. I just thought I'd plug that one. Yeah, just by the by. So we're not really changing, and we're not moving the needle. So, what are we going to do? How are we going to change it?
You've been a passionate advocate for sustainability for years now. and we often force your inner journey behind the leadership. But what we want to know is what sparked your personal transformation and interest in the inner development goals.
Do you know what I think it gave me? It's only about 4 years now that these have been developed. Yeah, they've only just come about now. The big conversation on them, and they've actually used the same designers who developed the Sustainable Development Goals, to give some sort of a framework to it, which is really nice. I mean, for me, I think I already have my inner development goals. I've just been really lucky, just a really lucky person. And I think now that this kind of framework is lovely for people who want to get on that journey, who think they're alone on that journey, and know that if they go into a boardroom and start talking about inner development goals, that you'll just get, shutters down on eyelids. But the more and more people that make this as a force for good, I think this is maybe one of the ways we can start changing society. The Sustainable Development Goals clearly are not really working as well as they should. Just on July 14th, the recent progress report on the SDGs was released. And we are doing well on some for women in STEM, and, I'm trying to think of what other ones we're doing well on, not climate anyway, but a lot of them are 18% in reverse now, which is really disappointing because we have 53 months left to, let's say, achieve them. I mean, obviously, we're not going to stop on December 31st, 2030, but so we're not really doing very well
But
on the goals.
is that because, is there like something that you can put a line under? Is it because of the politics in America, the politics in the Middle East, the situations going on, the Russian situation? Is this
It's a combination of everything. It's geopolitics and greed. That's for me. I mean, we should not be living in a society where there are these wars. We shouldn't.
nowadays? Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we shouldn't. A lot of the time, I think, I'd love to see more women on boards, more women on board, more women, being listened to, because it's a very still a male-dominated world. And I'm not criticizing male, female at all, but I think women bring in sometimes that softer, more emotional touch to life. And I firmly believe, and I'd love to be given that opportunity to show that if women led alongside men, that we would have really fewer wars, because there's fewer, that sort of that driving ego, and it's part of our biological makeup as well. I understand that,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah, definitely. But you can definitely see certain world leaders that the ego is because they're male. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah, and
and
I
then
know
that
we're
trickles
probably
down.
yeah, and we're probably going to be absolutely berated for saying this, but but I don't care because I think it's the truth. I mean, hopefully I'm allowed, and I'm going to mention it. On the war in Gaza. I mean, as bad as the Russian-Ukrainian war is, this is much worse. And so many people are crying out against it. I mean, particularly the Irish. I hate to just keep harping on them, but time after time, I see them in the European Union, in the Parliament, standing up and calling this out, and we're still where we are, and that is totally irresponsible. There are now children starving daily, dying of hunger in a world of, technology, AI, renewable. We're amazing. Look how far we've progressed, and look how far.
But that's what I think is fascinating. I think when you look at it, that's the scary part. That if you go through the 70s and 80s and 90s, I know there was definitely conflicts in the world, but you definitely would have thought that that's the worst it can get. It can only get better. And now we're at a stage now where it seems to be like a free for all. There's no there's no sheriff in town. There's
Exactly.
no
There's no real world leader who's
no.
confident enough to stand up and call this out.
Yeah.
And we can't. I feel powerless. I feel powerless daily. I try not to allow myself to dwell actually on a daily as to what's happening in our world, not just in our region, but in our world, because it's destructive for you.
Yeah. And but I also find it scary that it's almost a case of how, this sounds terrible, but how you can get so used to it. And I don't mean that it doesn't affect you, but it's kind of a case of, like, I'll go back, say, just like for COVID, for example. COVID was so scary. And then it's not scary. because you're used to it. And then a war happens in Russia, and it's terrible, and then you're used to it. And I just wonder, is that where the downside of having too much knowledge, too much information, you just get numb to it?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems. And it's interesting to see where we can't, as a world, deal with large catastrophes. We're not able to sort of deal with that. But I think if you saw the flooding in Texas at that camp, right?
Yeah.
And there was, I think, about 130 people dead in total. There was much more sort of empathy almost with that, because there was more of an understanding, of 130 people dying. When there's a plane crash in India recently, there's more, there's a lot more coming out, a lot more sort of understanding, for want of a better word, of what's happening, because I think you can relate to it a little bit more.
Maybe, yeah.
One death, two deaths. I remember with them, even for myself, I remember in the flooding in Valencia, recently, a couple of months back, and there was a family in a village, and he was waiting for his wife to come home. He was cooking dinner, his two sons, 6 and 4-year-old sons, and they lost him because he couldn't get them. Now that, like, I get goosebumps when I think about that, but that's only 2 people. So how am I doing on what's going on in the region with 33 children just died the other day, actually, of starvation. And that's hitting us, but it doesn't seem to be hitting us enough. So where, have we lost this sort of bit of humanity? What is wrong with us? And this is where I think to start talking about these inner developmental goals is really important. And as I said, it only sort of came out with a whole group of practitioners, of scientists who came together about 4 years ago. And obviously we're like, right, the sustainable development goals are not working. Poverty, hunger, gender equality, inequalities, it's not working. So how can we make this better? Because we know there's a whole lot of people out there with amazing conscience, with responsibility. I mean, who have ethics and values. And I'm one of them. I tend not to talk about it an awful lot, because, if you're in a business situation, you can see that people just think, oh, it's either her again, or it's the same soft subject, right? And as a male dominated business world, I mean, could you imagine me going in and sitting at a boardroom for, ExxonMobil, and start talking to them about the inner development goals, and the importance of their responsibility and their ethics and their values and everything? I mean, they'd either throw me out or just leave me there rambling. You know what I mean? So it's not accepted, that kind of thinking and talking, and it's wrong. So, you often tend to retreat into yourself and think, oh my gosh, am I the only one who thinks like this? But then, so with this IDGs, you see now there's a whole group of people. They're having conferences and they're gathering so many people together. And if you watch any of the videos and the participants, what they're saying is, it's lovely. It's wonderful to know that there are people who think like I do, and that sort of starts to build momentum. And I think it's really important. Yeah, I mean, look, the Sustainable Development Goals were something that I was already doing when I started up a business, like in 2015. Because I've been entrenched in ethics and values all my life, so I can't, I want to do a business that gives back to society or can leave a legacy or something. And then I got contacted by the Global Compact here in the UAE to say, will you join us? And then I suddenly found I had a whole business strategy that revolved around the UN goals, so around the 10 principles. So, no corruption, human rights, labor, environment, and then aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I thought, right, well, this will give me more credibility when I come to the table to talk, instead of being airy fairy soft. I'm now coming with, backed up by an organization that was established in 2000.
Right.
You
felt like more legitimate. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pity that I have to, but wonderful that I had it to do that. For me, the inner development goals are now going to be the same. They're going to, I look at them now, and they're only 4 years established, and I, as an idea, as an ideation, and I look at them and I think, oh, amazing, because now I can also start using these to give me more credibility, because I'm now backed up by an organization, by a whole group of people who want to powerhouse and bring these ideas forward, as a way to hopefully solve the Sustainable Development Goals and further, look at our society as it is.
How do you feel like it's 4 years in? is there like a time frame where for example, at a 10-year mark, do you expect a certain standard or a certain goal to be reached with this, or
I'm really wary of putting dates and months and, on things, because it should be just start to become a way of life. So, and even the framework around the IDGs, I don't want that to become, entrenched and written in stone, and this is how you have to behave, because you can see that it doesn't work. We had the millennial goals, we now have the sustainable development goals, and none of them are really working. So so what do we need to do? We need to reach back into people. People need to start. I mean, we need a change of mindset and education and otherwise. But we need to reach back into ourselves and start having a look at ourselves. And if you look at sort of the branding of the idea of the inner development goals, they're not as sort of as complex as the sustainable development goals, because there's 17 goals, there's 163 targets, and within each target they have their own set of goals. So it's a metric. So they are complicated and they interconnect beautifully, but they obviously are missing something, and I think this is what this group of people sort of saw as well, right? The goals are missing. What are they missing? They're missing also the philosophy of life, and your purpose and sense of purpose in life. That's what they're missing. So how do we then put these together? So they have them as the framework is around 5 dimensions with 23 skills. So divided over each dimension. So the first one is I was going to say branding. The first one is on yourself, on being, right? So that's your conscience, your existential being, your place in life, right? And the second one is thinking. Now, how many sort of critical thinkers do we have in the world? Right? It depends on your status, right? Are you in survival mode? Can I wake up in the morning and have positive thoughts about what my day is going to be? I mean, you probably can wake up having positive thoughts coming into your work, doing what you're doing, knowing that you don't, you've no intention of harming somebody, right? But let's say you wake up in a country where it's either war torn or drought, poverty, and you wake up and you think, how am I going to feed my family?
survival is
Right? So your critical thinking, your idea of life and everything, it's not there. You're in absolute survival mode. So you're not going to be able to think further, and that diminishes then your creativity, right? And you should not be living like that in 2025, right? You should not have to wake up in panic mode because you can't feed either yourself or your family, right? And then the third goal is relating to people, right? So these goals are also not designed to be just only for one person. They're about co-creation.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you relate to other people, right? How do I behave to people? How they behave to me. I behave properly to them, and then I expect them to behave in turn nicely with me.
Yeah.
Right? But then that brings it also to the being, right, of loving yourself. Who are, liking yourself, if you want to say, maybe loving yourself is the way it should be, right? You should stand in front of a mirror and say, I like what I see. I like that person. And then when you learn and can love yourself, then it's much easier for you to love others, right? And you do exude that type of, of people feel it from you. I often feel when I walk in the streets, I'll look at people and they'll smile, I'll smile back. And instead of, sometimes people will think, he's staring at me, you know, and right, and you get all these sort of silly thoughts in your head. But if you turn around and smile at the person, they smile back, and there's this lovely connection, and my sense of being is that I was lucky to have been brought up in a very loving household, in a household where we were brought up with no difference in color, creed, status. So I don't care who you are. I really don't care whether you're, from a royal family or you're, menial, whatever you do, whatever task you do. And to me, you're human.
Just
You
being a
have
nice human being.
incredible value. And show me that you're adding amazing value to life, and then I'll sort of say, oh yeah, that's brilliant. You're a great person.
Do you find out, but what you're saying is great, but do you find it's also the biggest battle to these could be cultural? in the sense of certain places it's very hierarchical, the word I'm trying to look for, or it
No, for sure. I know what you mean, because you're getting then sort of some male-dominated societies. Yeah, I mean that's a real struggle on women empowerment as well. Albeit I dislike that woman empowering or women empowerment, but yeah, it is. Of course, it's very cultural. And is this region ready for the idea of inner development goals? I'm not really sure.
do you feel that, sorry to cut across, but do you feel like also, because it's every day now, the social media makes things that can affect the younger generation in their thinking, in the sense of you go on certain platforms, say Instagram, and it's only beautiful people, beautiful boys, beautiful girls. That's 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 what you should look like. You should have the fancy car, you should have the fancy, and that's fine for goals. But there's certain people that's their role models now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I hate that. I dislike influencers. If you're influencing for good, like really good for societal good, and then I love you. But if you're not, then if you're just influencing for look at this makeup I found, or, and most of it is just rubbish. Most of it is like full of chemicals. None of it is really natural stuff. None of it is. You're influencing.
Short-term gains for someone, for a corporate.
Yeah, and again, it's like stimulating the whole linear economy, which we've been talking about for years that we need to get away from. We need a circular economy, but we're still flatlining, totally. And gosh, for the youth, it's really difficult for them. It really is hard, because they're all on their phones constantly. Even their concentration span is so low. I mean, I have a son who's 23 years of age, and he is super intelligent individual. And I'm sending him videos to watch, and I know he's going, oh, not another one. And I'm getting conscious of the fact that I don't want to send him anything longer than 30 minutes. And that's awful. And these were like avid readers, my other son as well. Like they love books and everything. And I know that a lot of their information is just coming now from TikTok videos and Instagram. So that's a huge influence. That's a huge influence, and doesn't allow critical thinking then either,
How do
I
you
think.
think that? How do you think? Because they're such powerful machines. You look at Facebook, you look at all these social platforms. How do you tackle that? Because they're obviously the future. They're the machines that you need to get messages across. I think obviously nowadays to younger people. Do you think the government should step in and try and control the content, or X amount of percentage should be delivered to a certain message, or should there be age limits? Do you think, like, are they the new cigarettes where you have to be 16 now to be on TikTok? Or I'm just wondering, like, where,
This is a whole bigger conversation as well.
or
I
do you
mean,
think we are just the older generation, and and the younger people are just, that's the cool thing, and we're just in the way. We just don't understand it.
no, because I think, look, I mean, I didn't grow up with tech whatsoever, and I love it. I love technology. I love the whole idea of AI in the best sense of how AI can be used. I like robots. I love the whole technology and space, the whole conversations around our universe and outside, and I love all that. Um, and I still think I'm not influenced by, well, I hope I'm not really influenced by it, but I'm older. So, with age comes more wisdom. With the youth, I think it's, what you learn in your home as well, or your environment, is so important to you. Right. It's really, I mean, I always remember my grandfather was a school teacher in a school in Dublin in Sing Street. And like he used to always say that although children spend hours and hours outside of the home in school situations, that's still the 99% of what you learn is within the home. So I don't think governments and suppressing knowledge and whatever like that. I don't think that's. I think the parents play a huge role here, and I think unfortunately an awful lot of younger parents, I can see it, are on their phones. The kids are on their phones. They're on,
They copy the parents.
yeah, and they are worried about this because of speech development in young children as well. They're already seeing that this is they have limited vocabulary when they should have more by the age of 2, 2.5.
Yeah.
So it is having an effect. I don't think it's where governments should step in. It's education and awareness, so we can get into the schools early, talking about inner development goals and your sense of self-worth, how you treat others, universities. And you know what? You'll be surprised when you go in and talk and have these conversations. Kids are great. They're hungry for this. And so our education system is fairly stifled. We're still teaching the same way as we were, when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just not relevant now. So, you need to start teaching the kids new skills, right? And actually skills, because we're all being educated in such higher level jobs that there'll be nobody around to be an electrician or to carve a piece of wood, or so we absolutely need to change our education system. But once you get in and start talking to the youth, they start being, you're validating their thoughts, you're listening to them. What do what are you afraid of, what's happening, how can we make it better for you, and start changing the whole education system as well. But unfortunately, a lot happens in the home. Right, a lot happens in the home and the environment. So, if you have a look now at children, I'm going back to Gaza again. If you have a look at the children who are growing up there now, if they live long enough, there's just nothing but hatred being personified. So, and I don't think it's even now one generation of hatred. I think you're going to get 2 generations of hatred. Right. So, how do you make that better? And you make that better by changing mindsets and changing how people operate, and it's really serious. We really, really need to make the world a better place. Honestly, I know that sounds like so, far-fetched and so airy-fairy, soft, whatever, but it is an actual fact. I mean, I'm no better than the man who stands beside me, than the woman who stands beside me, than the child I am ultimately responsible for. But we need to have these conversations and really deep dive into what are we missing in society? What are we following? We're following money because, and everybody you talk to, is and for myself as well, I need money to be sustainable, to keep a roof over my head, to provide for my children. I still need that. But do I need the excessive amounts? No.
Mm.
You know?
I find it interesting because I think it's strange because I don't think in any time in history we've had the opportunity to stop all wars. We have the technology to stop all wars. We have the medicine to cure 90% of the world's diseases and famines. We've never had as much food. We've never had such accessibility to information. You could be, you look at Starlink, you can now get internet in an African village. But yet, for some reason, we're going backwards. I don't know if humans weren't ready for the advancement where we are, for better words, we are warriors or fighters, or we are bred to hate our neighbor. We're greed. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no excuse, but for some reason, we're here.
Yeah, well, it was actually interesting. I was having this conversation with my with one of my sons, and he said, our brains are still wired in, as in the past, and we don't actually have the ability to deal with an awful lot of what we're seeing. And so what you're saying now is that are we actually able to deal with all of this progress? And possibly not. And you used the word reverse, and that's exactly what's happening with the Sustainable Development Goals, 18% in reverse. We still have, and I've been talking about this probably since 2015, 2016, we still have 800 million people in the world who are in famine, who don't have food, who don't, like, what is that? So it's okay that I buy this and I buy that and I buy the other. And yet, am I aware of this? So, for me, I love my coffee. I love my espresso. I love piece of dark chocolate. I have other vices, but these are my two that I love. Um, and when I'm always questioning, and I will always buy coffee that I know has at least got some blockchain, applied to it, because I don't want to be drinking a coffee and knowing that the farmer who has grown and nurtured this bean has suffered. Right? I don't want to know that the farmer who is producing and growing the cacao trees, that they have suffered. Right? And I want to know my supply chain for any products that are going to come on the market on a shelf in the European Union. You need to have them verified, completely verified. So this is an enormous step forward, and this is not just something that's being talked about. This is something that is actually going to
Is this only in Europe, or is
it's for Europe.
it's only Europe?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it means that everything, you do on your supply chain, like I was on a webinar about it, and there was one chocolate company operating in Africa, I believe. They had 4 different suppliers, and you have to get now all this geolocation so that you know exactly where it's coming from. But these farmers didn't even have a laptop or a smartphone, let alone a mobile phone. So the company actually provided all of this for them, so that they were, because they had to. So if it's forcing you to take care of your supply chain, well, great.
I hope it was Cadbury's.
Yeah.
Was it
No.
Cadbury's?
Well, that's not chocolate, actually.
What's that now?
No. Anything under, I think, 50%, if there's cacao, less cacao in
really?
it. So it's not chocolate. They don't call it chocolate. You're eating just like sugar. If you look at it, next time, have a look at the back of the ingredients. And that's another whole conversation we can have another day.
With today's challenges and climate change, equality, rapid innovation, and the more than technical fixes, how can inner capabilities help leaders and teams navigate uncertainty and drive meaningful change?
Uh,
I know it's a tricky. That's a
No, no,
loaded.
no, no. Look, I mean, I'm very idealistic, and I always have been and will remain so, as to what your qualification should be as a leader, right? And especially with the society that we have now. So if you don't have, huge amounts of empathy, emotional intelligence, be, full of ethics and values, then step down. Right? And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous to most people, because that is not the thought processes of larger corporates. But for me, it should be. This is the only way to start bringing your business forward, because that means if you entrench those values in your business, that means nobody down your supply chain is going to suffer. And then you bring that into your employees, and then, you bring everybody to the table together. Don't leave anybody out. There are some quieter people in companies who may have fantastic ideas. Give everybody opportunities. So be just a leader with, like, open door policies. Don't shy away from somebody coming to you and even saying, look, being critical. I don't think that you're doing this right. And then be open to say, okay, what do you think we can do to improve it? And look, I know this sounds totally idealistic, but this is the way the world should go forward.
Is there anyone? I'm not putting you on the spot, but is there anyone that you look to as an example? Like, is there any, like,
Company that I think, I think it's the one, and it's always getting called out. But the sad thing is that it's probably the one that works the best, is Patagonia. Like, they are a superb example of how to run a very, very successful organization with completely giving back to society and running an organization the way it should be run.
what makes them?
Their leader, he's retired now, but
Yeah.
the philosophy of how to run their business.
And why do you think no one has tried to copy it, or are they trying to copy it and can't be done because of him, or why do you think? Why is not more companies going? That's us. We want to be that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because how do they make money and still operate that way? And you can, but you need everybody to start operating the same ways as well. Maybe they were luck. I heard somebody recently who's a multimillionaire saying luck plays a huge role in this.
Yeah.
But I think we just need many more conscionable leaders. So therefore, what do we need? We need systemic change. We need to change the education system, because we need to, bring these inner development goals, the sustainable development goals, into the education system. and actually teach the children, what life should be going forward. But the problem is, man, I think we have an inherent desire to be better than the other. There's a different sense of overachievement. I mean, I know I've done training courses on climate change and ESG as well, and I've been called a socialist. And because of my sort of, au contraire ideas. But, for me, that's the only way to operate. And it's not because I'm older and thank goodness have, gained a lot of wisdom on life, but I've always been like this.
Yeah.
I haven't changed.
I'm just curious, and this is only for my own, this is totally off topic. Where would you put, I had a conversation with someone recently about this, and I found myself leaning towards the person for what they've done, but not for the person, on Elon Musk.
Yeah. Oh, my friend's gonna love this when I come out with this one. Look, he is a very intelligent man. He's a very smart man. He didn't invent he didn't invent Tesla. He didn't come up with the idea, right? That wasn't his, but he's a really smart marketing guy, and he's a great talker. Now, I mean, what he was doing during the election and manipulating conversation and stuff like that was just absolutely ludicrous. Of course, you can see it's all backtracked now, and he's sort of, he can't deny what he did, but I think he can. Maybe he sees the folly of his ways. I don't think so. I mean, he's just an exception, right? He's just he's a different thinker. He's a completely different mind. And he would not be somebody that I would look up to as to say, wow, I want to follow what he does. I want to emanate him. I don't, because I mean, he turned around and he said, empathy is killing society, and it's like, what a stupid statement,
This is
man.
what this is what I find interesting when people, because I find that the person isn't, my argument for, and it wasn't for Elon, it was for his business, was without Elon, we wouldn't have had the EV race. Now, the whole ethical thing of EVs could be batteries, not, but without Elon, we wouldn't have the EVs. We wouldn't have had the space program. We wouldn't have had the Starlink, which connects. So I find myself kind of going, it's interesting where someone, what he does on the ground seems good, but what he's,
Yeah, but it's very difficult for people. You're able to split the what he's done and what he's achieved with the persona, right? And I can do the same. I can do exactly the same. But how many people are actually able to do that? So then you start following his ideology. Well, his ideology from a few months ago, which was extremely right wing. All of this.
yeah, this what I find so interesting, that if you could, here's an example. If Elon ran for president, and let's just use Ireland for an example, would you vote for him?
Absolutely not.
No.
No, you must be joking.
Interesting.
No, no way. I mean, and I've loved the last few presidents we've had in Ireland. I mean, especially from Mary Robinson, Mary McAleese, and our now president. Unfortunately, I wish that Michael D. Higgins could stay the rest of his life in because he is an intellectual. He is a straight talker. He says it as it is, and he's been a wonderful ambassador for Ireland. But Elon Musk, no,
No,
no.
because I'm just interested. I think of Elon as in the sense of, not, again, I think of the stuff on the ground. Like if everywhere had Teslas, less fossil fuels. If everywhere had Starlink, then we'd have more kids being educated in places that are like not being educated. If the boring companies would take the traffic off the streets, then that's the thing. If we could put people on Mars, it's a sacrifice. But if Elon wants to sacrifice to be the leader, is that worth it?
No, no. No, I mean, because do you want people to have his thought processes? And that's what would be leading us to our society?
I don't know what my thing is, I don't know what his thought process is.
Yeah, and he probably doesn't even know
And I don't think
himself.
he knows himself. I think he's as you said, such a unique individual, good or bad, wherever the way you fall on him.
Look, I think what we need to do is we need to find a way to connect with ourselves and really show the importance of that connection with ourselves, right? Because if you have that connection with yourself, but you're not in survival mode, right? So we need to alleviate poverty, hunger, wars. Like, we need to really stop it. It has to stop. And if we can stop that by having that really sense of wrong within us, right? Then you can have critical thinkers. Critical thinkers and creativity is what we need to bring us forward as well. And so, in the beginning, I must say, like years ago, I thought Elon Musk was great. I did. I thought what he was doing. I liked what he was doing. I mean, I like his talk about Mars, but I wouldn't for, all the money in the world go and want to live on a red planet, a planet where I, couldn't see outside, breathe. I wouldn't want to, but I love, as I said earlier, the whole space exploration. And so I admire, in a sense, what he has achieved or his team has achieved, but I do not admire him as a person, and I do not think he is somebody that we should look up to follow.
Right. Interesting. You don't. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, you look at somebody like this guy Andrew Tate and his brother, and the influence that he's had on young boys and everything. That is just awful, because that sets women back, another 150 years.
I saw something interesting recently that um countries that had compulsive service, I think like Finland and Korea and these kind of countries, where young men had to go to the army for, I think they had to go for 18 months. I think it was minimum 12 at 18 months, that they had the lowest engagement with Andrew Tate for some reason.
That's
That
interesting.
Yeah, that because when you go to the army, then you realize you've just something higher than you. You've a father figure or whatever it is. Where it's the countries that are lackadaisy, that are kind of young men between the ages of 15 and 25 who haven't got a purpose, and they see this guy who has loads of cars and then that's what they're going to.
Yeah. I mean, I am a pacifist by nature. I remember when my older son was born, and he was getting actually a Dutch passport because it was kind of the easiest at the time due to a certain situation. And they still had conscription in the Netherlands, and I was like, I don't want my son to go into an army. And I've said that on a couple of LinkedIn posts when I see, when a couple of months back there was a lot of
He was the one who suggested that he was going to bring us
yeah.
to the UK. Yeah.
And I, and there was a lot of talk, with the geopolitical situation that went on a few months ago, right? And people were getting very nervous everywhere. And I wrote on a post on LinkedIn, I said, I'm sorry, but I did not bring my children into this world, my sons, to go and fight. And somebody actually commented, and what about the women? And I was like, yeah, well, neither. I'm talking from my boys, but I'm not sure. So, and I'm not sure about your statistics on that. But there again, following a guy like Andrew Tate, like I have two sons, they don't follow him, they don't admire him, they don't like anything about what he does, right? So, why do they think like that? Because I have, had the ability to bring them up with that kind of thought process. I could have easily have with a different type of thought processes. And so how do you do that? Because I talk to so many people, and sometimes I think, wow, what way are you influencing your children then? And and it probably sounds like very arrogant from me, but I have always had like a real connection with life, with nature, with how we should live. And I don't think it's wrong, because my thoughts are, you don't harm people, you love children, you love people, no matter what their status is in life, right? We're all equal. And I really think we need to. I mean, I think we need to bring more women to the fore, like absolutely. And I know people still have in the back of their minds, well, if she's going to take that job, well, is she going to have a baby? Is she going to have a family? Yes, she will, and she should have every right to.
Yeah.
And then come out, and then the next woman can take her place, and then she can go and have a child, and so we can continue the cycle that women bring so much to the table. We bring the same to the table as men.
Yeah.
We bring it in a different manner. Why are there more women working in sustainability? Because we're natural nurturers. But within relationships, within parenthood, there should be equal rights as well. Okay, the woman maybe needs more paternity leave because the stress on the body, the whole childbearing is a really tough, tough 9 months. But afterwards, there should be equal parenting.
I think the Scandinavian countries, Scandinavia are light years ahead of it, and they've shown that it can work.
It does work.
Like but for some reason, I don't know what it is, where they see it's a work on success, but they just don't implement it, which I find.
Yeah, maybe it's a whole money thing. I don't know, but I think we need, we need a whole new world of thinkers, of people who can think, who are not in survival mode, so that they're able to use their minds. They're not stressed. They can. I mean, look, I'll have my fair amount of stresses as well. I'm not all holier than thou, but I have found a way to, and I know how to deal with it, so that I will never take it out on another person. I will, internalize it, deal with it. Because, that's my stresses should not affect you, and yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes it does. And maybe I'll take it out on my dogs. Um, but, and I know this is a very difficult conversation, and I'm sure people who will watch this podcast will go, you know, if I came in here in a caftan and flowing robes and full of beads and stuff, would it have been more acceptable to have this conversation? Right? I should have actually put on a whole shirt and tie, suit, effort. Um, but look, I firmly believe, and at the end of the day, our society needs an absolute major change, because we cannot have people dying of hunger. We cannot have people dying of starvation, and don't even, start on the whole climate change and what that's going to bring with it as well. So if we don't start, adapting and changing to a new world order, a better world order, then, I don't see much hope for humanity on this planet, to be honest with you, going forward.
The young people are often at the front lines of activism, but also under enormous pressure. How can the IDGs empower you to lead with clarity, resilience, and purpose?
Change the education system. Just change it. Yeah. Yeah. Stop this learning by rote. Stop, homework. More homework. You were sent to school to learn. Why do you have to come home and do it again? Learn something different in the home. Go baking, go making dinner with your mom and dad. That's lessons learned. That's life's lessons, right? But I really firmly believe that one of the biggest values that we can add in society is educating everybody, and educating everybody for good, changing the system so that we bring everybody along with us. And hopefully the youth, we can get to them and we can help them, because a lot of them are suffering from climate anxiety. A lot of them with AI, coming along, they have no idea whether they're going to have jobs. What am I studying for? What am I doing? So I think it's really important that we show them that we care, and those inner development goals, are for everybody, for the collaborations, because that's how you go ahead in life. You work with each other to make things right. So, and then, action, because we never got to the 5. We got to 3, and then we went all over the place. But there, any kind of goals that you can set in life that give people purpose for good, it can only be good.
What do you think is the sacrifice of modern day comforts, or that will help that situation? Because obviously nowadays it's all about, like, this is probably a thing. I remember when I was younger, you never heard of billionaires.
No.
Do you know, there was never a bit like, there was a millionaire, there was millionaires, or there was multimillionaires. Now we're getting to a stage now of billionaires. There's probably trillionaires now. We have Bezos and Musk and Zuckerberg. Do you think that people now, the incentive is now, people are so incentivized by money, that's so hard, it's ingrained in the system to, people will care more about money than people.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But how do you get, how I know you're saying education, but how do you get that out of the, how can we change that? What would it take to change that?
I reckon that it's not going to be something, like from an educational point of view. I can see climate change and what's coming is going to change that, if we don't act quick enough to change it ourselves. Because we have the 9 planetary boundaries. We have crossed at least 7 now, though they haven't officially announced it from the Potsdam University, but I'm sure we've crossed the 7th one, which is the ocean. We've 2 left, which will allow humanity to live safely within Earth systems. So I would say that I have a sort of feeling that climate change will accelerate and make a lot of changes for us before we can manage to make the proper changes. Um, but look, we need to just pull ourselves away from, big money. That's the be all and end all of life, of having a bigger car, having a bigger house, having a bigger TV. Why would you, in the name of goodness, aspire to that when you have life outside, living, just beautiful nature, the beauty of forests, lakes, deserts, everything. Where we that's a huge disconnect with, and I think that's such a shame. I think that's such a shame for people, because I don't think that's living.
It's interesting because I feel that the technology is so advanced, but it's holding us back. Like what we said earlier on about the other stuff, I feel like, you know, the technology is keeping us indoors as opposed to going outdoors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the climate is keeping us indoors
Yeah,
as opposed to going
yeah.
outdoors. I mean,
Then
in
that,
this
that
region where we're set to warm up faster than most other regions, it's going to keep us indoors. So what is keeping people indoors then? Entertainment, shopping centers again, So look, I think these inner development goals, or any conversation on what is changing people to give them purpose and more purpose to life. I think we've had this conversation before, and I'm always saying it. You're born, you're educated if you're lucky enough. You work, and then you work and you die. Right, the certainty in life, the fourth one. Right, so should there not be much more than that? Should there not be, much more fun to be had? Much more. I don't know. Just live your life in a better way that harms nobody.
Mm.
As I say, I'll harp back to, I do not want to drink a cup of coffee knowing that I've harmed somebody. I mean, I've traveled. Travel is a great education, brilliant. And I've seen extreme poverty in countries, and you feel, hopeless. What can I do to change that? But it's not me just individually. It's a whole movement of people, people who can be thinkers. I mean, we keep saying the word thinking, but how many people are actually thinking about life? Are they thinking about their next meal, or thinking about the next item they want to purchase, or, the next thing, oh, my neighbor got this and she got that, and your woman has this beautiful dress. And, so where's, this is where the critical thinking comes in, and that inner reflection. I mean, how many people spend a half an hour a day, even just with themselves, just coming back calm. Where am I? What's my direction? What am I doing? Have I harmed somebody? Have I done something?
Do you think it's the absence or the lesser fact of religion is now? Because I always felt like, for example, I'll just go back home. Like I felt my grandparents always had that because they had religion. They whether you liked the church or not the church, but that was their peace. That was their reflection time. And I wonder, we're out that's gone. Nothing has really replaced it. And I wonder if that's where, I'm not saying religion is the answer, but I'm just talking about where people took the time every day to go to church.
Yeah, it's probably not the best subject to bring up with me, but
No, but I don't mean the actual.
no, no,
I
I
don't mean
know
the
you
Catholic
don't.
Church, but I mean
Yeah, no, 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 I
that
know.
kind of
Yeah,
higher being belief.
yeah,
Could be
like
whatever. It could be
yeah,
Mother
the sense
Nature.
of belonging, because
Yeah.
that's what it creates, right? It creates a sense of belonging for people. Personally, I don't need that. Because I find I have my own purpose, and how I should behave in life. I have my values. I have my commandments. I mean, the fact that you need to make a set of rules for people, I don't like. But if it's the only way that you can get people to be good, you know, then so be it. And I know that that the idea of this vast universe, way outside what we even can even think to know about, can be very alarming for people. So religion, I know, does give them that tangible, that hold on something, right? Because if you just think that you come from dust, or you come from whatever you believe in, to go back to nothing, then I think that can be a very alarming thought for people. And religion gives them that comfort, that safety, right?
I mean religion in a peaceful, good way. I don't like religion being used for excuses for harm, and which is going on in the world at the moment, as we know. But I meant in the sense of just a kind of a reflection moment on.
Yeah, because I mean, it's if you think about the whole Indian religions, that whole meditation, that's wonderful. And that's what I relate to a lot as but not as a religion, but as a way of life, because it allows me to reflect upon myself. It allows me to think. And I'm lucky enough that I'm not thinking always in panic or survival, and so that I'm able to think, and that thinking allows you to be a little bit more creative, allows you to be a little bit better as a person. So I think if we can solve a lot of poverty and world problems like this, which we should, we should not be doing anything that's harming another. I was talking to somebody yesterday who started up a clothing line of well, you want to use sustainable clothing, but actually the word's clothing. And he said, this shirt was like 300 dirham, because when I looked at my full cost across the whole supply chain, this is the cost I was getting. Right. And instead of buying a shirt for 15 dirham that's been imported, now ask yourself, the person who made it, what money are they getting? And you know the answer to that one: below a living wage. Right. So, I think we need to just, we need a guiding set of rules. We need something to guide us, I think, as people. But when you get to the stage where everybody is living in comfort, we're not having to hunt or gather, where where we have it, then I think you get to a better space where people can actually be connected with themselves, and then have that real critical thinking to know, and to be able to stop yourself, to know that this is not the right thing to do. So to take a weapon in my hand and point it at somebody and take their life is completely the wrong thing to do. Now, how do I know that's the wrong thing to do? How do I reach that stage within myself that I know it's wrong? And the community has a huge hand in that as well, right? So we work as a collective together.
Yeah.
So yeah, idealistic, a little.
Okay, we have a quick fire close round. A book that shaped your perspective.
Honestly, I know it sounds really arrogant, but I have read so much. Fiction gives me huge knowledge as well about people. I don't particularly read any self-help books, poetry, Rumi.
Would you write a book?
Yeah, look, I mean, I adore reading. I love reading because it gives great knowledge. I have to admit, I still read books, paper books, but I don't think I've been influenced. I think my greatest influencer in my life has been my family, my parents, my growing up, my childhood.
Wanna go for one? Okay, one inner practice you can't live without.
Meditation.
How often do you do it? Every day?
Yeah, I would at least. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I took the wrong turning this morning because my mind was all inside this morning.
And when you do it, do you have a particular space, or do you do it in the car, or do you do it when you go to bed, or when is it? You just.
A particular space? No, anywhere. I can do it anywhere. Yeah, I can do it anywhere. Maybe in the morning, even sitting outside trying to breathe in the morning around 6:37, just with the birds, and then just getting that inner calm. Lying with the dogs on a carpet, because the dogs they love that. Dogs always love when you're doing yoga or meditation. They love to be with you.
How long would you spend?
Sometimes an hour at the weekend, maybe, but during the week, no, maybe 15 minutes in a day, or yeah, or even in a gym, actually. Yeah, when I'd be doing stuff, I can still just lose myself in nice thoughts and stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What gives you hope right now?
What gives me hope right now? Uh, Organizations that get set up like these ones for the inner development goals, knowing that there are a whole amount of people out there who really care, because you often sit in your bubble. I always say to people, I eat, sleep, and breathe sustainability. I tend to only follow people who are living within that realm. And then you go to a dinner party or something, and there's loads of people at the table who do not do anything on sustainability, and you're sitting there thinking, ooh, there is another world out there. So my hope is for the fact that there are now, that there's a whole movement going on in the world, and if we can just come together as a collective to make change, that's my hope. And I think as humans, we always need a shred of hope, because if you can't hope, then what is there in your life anyway, right?
What's the point?
Yeah.
But you do have hope.
Yeah.
Good.
I do have hope.
Adrienne, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.